Angela. I'm one of the I'm a fourth of NOS, which is New Orleans Solidarity Storytellers. Welcome to our first ever People's Storytelling Festival and also our first ever publishing panel, the business of books and booking. We have some amazing people on our panel today. We're going to ask some questions, and also y'all are welcome to ask any questions. I guess raise your hands. Feels like, yeah, sure, we'll do that. Or I'll call it
We're all friends here, it's fine.
Yes, so I'm going to have everyone introduce themselves. But yeah, Bree, you want to start?
Sure.
And well, introduce yourself and also talk a little bit about how you got into your spaces as a writer or perhaps magazine editor. And go from there.
All right. My name is Frequency, or Free. Pronouns are free. And I am a two-time published author. The first time was self-published, actually. And I did this in 2014, 2015. I was about 24 years old, and I was out in the streets just like doing spoken word, just oral tradition. And a lot of folks were asking for something tangible and material to be able to take back home with them. And this was before the like YouTube channels of poets had really started to go viral. And this moment where I was like, wow, you actually don't have anything for people to be able to connect back to whatever experience they had when we were performing live. And as much as I was raised in the oral tradition, I had been starting to think a lot about archiving.
Yeah.
And how much people, like I ran into this woman who had bought my book 10 years ago, and she just happened to have it in her backpack, and it looked like she had read it like once a month at least for the last 10 years, and I was like, I would like to have something tangible to be able to give folks. And so that's how I got into publishing originally. Before that, I was mostly just oral and spoken word artist. And I'll talk about it later on the panel, but I also just had another book published a couple of months ago now, traditionally published, and so I have a lot of thoughts about both of the processes of self-publishing and traditional publishing that I'm happy to share with people.
Amazing. Also, I feel like I should amend my statement. I said writer, which is a form of what we're talking about, but also storyteller. Like there are there's a lot of different ways that get us to books or to other forms of storytelling. So if you feel more drawn to kind of telling your storytelling creation story, then lean into that, right?
Also I'm a touring artist, so I think in terms of bookings, that's its own whole different thing. So
you're available if anyone.
Well, we need. All right.
Yeah.
My name's Lauren Hinton. I have a background in like advertising and design, and I am the creative director and co-founder of TBD Magazine. TBD Magazine is a quarterly publication, basically committed to documenting the underground culture in the South and the Caribbean. And through our publication and the events that we do and just general documentation, we hope to create like a network of artists that like are really world building based on collaboration and experimentation and all those things. And so like the magazine is just one way to document those conversations and things like that. How did I get into it? I mean, I would say I'm a visual artist, and I do design on, so I think, honestly, I feel more of a conduit to other people's stories than like to tell my own per se, through the magazine. And so I just felt that there was a void in covering people that I knew, and I wanted to create that for us.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, I think that's also a like really good topic we should discuss more about too, is not just like being the writer or the storyteller yourself, but how you lifting up other people's voices as well. I love that. Charisma, you want to go?
Hi, I'm Charisma Price. I'm the author of I'm Always So Serious.
What?
Okay, so
What does that sticker say?
winner of the Whiting Award.
What does that say? A little bit. Sorry,
Winner of the Whiting Award.
that's big enough.
So I guess I'm a poet. I'm starting to experiment with fiction as well. So my background into poetry, I always really liked storytelling, and I was really interested in writing and film. So I have a more, I guess, traditional background when it comes to poetry. I have an MFA. So going through the MFA program, and the book is a very revised version of my thesis. So having a thesis advisor and a mentor guide me through this, and also I am someone who loves an external deadline because I have no problem disciplining myself. And I'm like, oh, I have to turn this into someone else. So the production of the book, a lot of it took place in graduate school, and also because like I had to bring in a poem every other week from my classmates. So for me, I really love poetry because you can ask a lot of questions, and it doesn't have to be. I mean, all genres can be experimental, but I feel like poetry is the most freeing, and there's no formula to it. So for me, I really like the genre itself. I write a lot about Blackness in New Orleans, being from here. I feel like it's a good tool to tell stories about my youth, but also just what I witnessed, my friends, family, things like that. So, yeah, I'm really hoping to, I guess, especially, I'm working on a second book. I'm very happy about that. But yeah, I hope to, if I guess maybe with the organization's help, mentor young people is really cool.
That's amazing, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have an external deadline on this one?
My book, the second book. I have a good first draft of it. I have a few
Amazing.
friends that I want to read it and then maybe send it to see when I publish it. Like,
Yeah, I love that. Congratulations also, that's a big, getting one book out is amazing, and also being able to continue to.
oh, they don't know about the second book. I'm just saying. I'm going to send it to them to see
I
if
know
they
that
like
you
it.
wrote the second one. I was like the process of pushing out
Right, writing, publishing, two different
multiple
things.
babies.
Yeah. These are my little babies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Daniel W.K. Lee. I am the author of a book called Anatomy of Want, which came out just before the pandemic in 2019, which is a really interesting experience, honestly, trying to push a book during a pandemic. Could definitely share about that. Just like Charisma, my book was a modified version of my MFA thesis. The poems in it span like 20 years or so.
Wow.
It took me about 15 to try to get it published. And
15 years?
Yeah. And at least the first iteration of it,
Yeah.
and then just a long thing. So, but along the way, though, I was involved with the Asian American Writers Workshop. Was an editorial assistant for an anthology called Takeout. We were writing Asian Pacific America. I've been on the kind of the publishing side before. I'm working on a second manuscript, which is nothing like the first book. It's very politically oriented, which is kind of how I started. I was, my writing career, as it were, was inspired by Reggie Capico and the New Origins Poets Cafe. My first book doesn't read anything like it, but that voice, the desire to write about politics and what was kind of going on. This is in the mid-90s, so AIDS activism was kind of central there. So I'm kind of coming back to it with this new manuscript, and hopefully that will get published, or a deal will happen sometime this year. I don't know.
Lots in the works, y'all. This is very exciting. I want to kind of start with grounding us sort of in like why people are even publishing generally, and why and how, as writers, as artists, we have to make money. And so I think we've been really, the main trope and stereotype that comes out is this idea of the starving artist. Like, you can't create art unless you're only able to buy pizza that doesn't have pepperoni on it. I do that one for frequency. But there's this concept of, and like overarching like theme across a lot of artists, and like dominant trope that like you have to starve in order to create art. And that's not the case. And would love to hear more of like how that sort of idea has played into, and anyone can answer, anyone can respond to this. Would love to understand how that idea has kind of played into like your experience with publishing and bookings, and trying to find ways to sort of, not to sound super corporate-y, but like how do you monetize what you're doing? Like how do you make money off of it so you can keep doing what you love?
I'll start by saying, I think that the starving artist trope is an intentional thing, because it keeps artists from being able to create at their full capacity. Like, just literally think of the word. Like, have you ever tried to write when you're really, really hungry? Like, you're not doing good writing, right? And so, I think it's intentional that artists are socialized to think that we have to offer what it is that we do for free because it's just like aesthetic or it's beautiful, but it doesn't actually take into account like what it takes of us and from us. And I remember when I was younger, and yeah, I would do so many things for free, or like my cost of the cab to get to the show would be more than they were actually paying me. And the only way I was able to sustain that was because I had a job, right? So I wasn't relying on my poetry for my income. But then once I made the transition into being a full-time artist, I actually had to get a lot more serious with folks who are being like, this is my livelihood, this is what I make my living of. And so my prices, first of all, aren't based on like that 3 minutes that you want me to perform. It's based on the fact that like some of this shit took 20 years to write, right? Like that's what I'm pulling from, that's what you're charging for, is that I've been doing this for 20 years. When I come up there, I'm not just gonna be like, roses are red, violets are blue. Like, I'm gonna go up there and people are gonna understand why poetry should be included in different things. And so right now I have like a booking agency. What I did when I realized I was ready to be a full-time artist is I looked at all of the other full-time artists in my field and I went and I interviewed them. Both the ones who were successful and the ones who may not have been quite so successful, to figure out what not to do as well. And then there's a lot of discernment that goes into it too, because it's like, I don't necessarily want to be at the biggest booking agency whose biggest contractor was the Defense Department, which was an option for me. You know? So there's also just a part of knowing yourself and what you're trying to put out there and the limits that goes into it as well. Yeah, we'll stop.
I think the trope of the starving artist and romanticizing it is really a symptom of a culture that doesn't really understand the value of culture and the artists. And it's just part of a system that's like, well, we're going to undervalue you, we're going to underfund you. And you see that played out even in like cities like ours in New Orleans, where I can only speak as a poet, but the funding for writing or writers, financial support, is vastly different than it is from visual artists, or vastly different from musicians. So, I mean, I push back on, I want artists or writers in particular to kind of push back on the idea of this romantic idea of it, like that the suffering is going to help you create better, when really it's like it's a system telling you like you don't deserve to thrive in order to create, and I think that's really fucked up. And then along the line of making money and having a job, especially as a poet, it's become, I would say, in the past 40 years, that it seems like the only way you can be a poet and have a life is to work and be in academia. You know, Prism is a professor, which I'm not coming for you. What I'm saying, what it is that the schedule of being a teacher allows you some time to also then stop being a teacher, then you can actually do the writing, because Lord knows the thing I've feared about becoming a teacher is not wanting to write, because I teach writing, right? So, I mean, there's so many things, and I'm just gonna bring up this one little point, and I'll shut up, which is the publishing point, which is why I think self-publishing is so compelling. Is you keep what you sell versus a royalty, which is not livable.
Exactly. That is a point I want to see if anyone else wants to respond to this, but I do think there is a big. I work with an author who recently published a children's book, and it's amazing. It's doing really well. She's not going to see money off of it for another year and a half when she starts to get paid off from it, and it's nothing of like the book. That's not where some of the money actually comes from, which is why bookings are such an important conversation too, because you're able to actually charge what you should be charged, or like what you should be making. So this is something I definitely want us to dig into more, but I want to see if anyone else wants to respond around starting artist. trope first?
I think I have to put myself out there in the fact that with our magazine, I think we're a little bit different. We are investigating how we can build sustainability within artists. And I think because like as much as it may be a romanticized thing, I think there is some truth to it that like the art labor is not valued by the capitalist system, so therefore like yes, we can fight to have more of those coins, but like the system does not value us, period. So how do we create new systems that we can depend on each other to do that? And in no way, shape, or form can I like come with the answers to that, but I think that is what we're interested in.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, when the artist is participating in and like interacting with and being with the people, then there's a reciprocity that happens between those things, like the community, you know, all of those things. I think that's where I'm coming from, because I do have a job and you know what I'm saying, and I make a magazine on the side, so it's not like I figured it out as far as monetization piece of it. But I do think that what you guys are saying is like very important to like value yourself, because again, the system will not always do that for you. So yeah, it's an interesting kind of conversation, especially for me, because I'm like, we are trying to build, like, what does real community look like? Like, when I eat, you eat. When like, I have a house, you have a house. Like, and we're moving like that. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, that's what I have to say about this.
I mean, that's so much of the conversation too, is like, where do we go from here? How do we change these systems so that we don't keep leaning on this trope that doesn't really work and doesn't make sense? Crispin, do you have something you want to add?
Yeah, as a poet that works in academia, like the idea.
I wasn't coming for you, that's what I'm saying.
Oh no, I wasn't. I was just saying to the starving artist. As a chronically ill artist, I have, and that's what a lot of my second book is about. I have a condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a very painful connective tissue disorder that affects, like, everything is made of connective tissue in the heart, so it's scary. But as someone who gets like chronic pain flare-ups, I mean, I guess I'm still speaking to the starving artist, but like the chronically ill artist, like the medical bill artist. My medical bills are very tough because I see a specialist and that specialist doesn't take insurance. But also as someone who does have a job as a professor who has health insurance, when it comes to like regular checkups and like dental things, yes. So I do feel like a reason, well, when it comes to academia, there is this structure, and you know, sometimes it is like very tiring because just like when you do like a booking, like teaching is a performance, and sometimes I get really fatigued from that because I'll teach a group of intro students and I have an advanced workshop. So when you're teaching someone a skill, no matter if it's like in a school system or anything for the first time, you really have to take them step by step.
Absolutely.
And while I do find joy in like when students discover something for the first time, like, oh, I didn't know you could do this in poem, story, or something like that. It's very beautiful to see. But also, I always joke that like teaching is like stand-up comedy, but no one's laughing. Because it's just like you're there and you're trying to give it your all to an audience who, whether they voluntarily showed up to your class, whether they need it for a credit.
They all have those neutral faces.
Yes, and they'll stare at you like a deer in headlights, and it's like, am I doing a good job? Is it that I'm confusing? Like, let me know. So I feel like the starving art, like one of the reasons why, you know, I am in academia is because when I was in grad school, I had a teaching fellowship. I do like to teach, but also that structure of, I guess, there are certain privileges, like certain things, like I have a research stipend where if I want to, let's say, like how AWP is like a big writing conference or something like that, I can use research funds for applying to things or anything related to my work. So I guess if I needed like, I don't know, a rare book, something like that, there's a small stipend every year for me. So there are the privileges of academia, but also in teaching a lot, like this week, it was just an extremely tiring week. We're getting towards the end of the semester, so me and my students are also just very tired. Like I slept all day yesterday. I didn't leave the house anyway. Like today I'm finally getting steps in. So I do feel that it is a balancing act because there is a lot of stuff that I want to work on, and I cannot wait till like the summer or the winter break because, you know, most of my every day is devoted to reading someone's work.
Yeah.
whether or not they're engaged in the class or whether or not they're really, really into it. That is my job first and foremost. And then in academia, faculty meetings, and then they expect you to do some type of community service with or without the university. So the idea of a starving artist, sometimes we do venture into things like academia, or I have a lot of friends who have jobs that aren't writing related because, like you were saying, if you're talking about writing all day, when you get home, do you want to write?
Yeah.
So I do feel like we have to be a part of these systems that aren't always to our mental, physical benefit because, like you all have spoken, like it's hard to see someone who really, really values art. And I've noticed in particular poetry, I feel that sometimes fiction writers get more respect and they definitely get paid more when they send their work to journals or when they're publishing. So as a poet, I feel like poetry as a genre is one of the most transformative type of genres, and so few people read it. So I don't know, I just really want people to read poetry, because like you will be taught Shakespeare or Robert Frost, and then it's just like, all these dead old white men. And then we have living writers who write about wonderful things. Like I taught my students a poem that had a fidget spinner in it. Like you can literally write about anything, and it takes them a while to really like get in the groove. Like, oh, I believe you. So I do feel like we live in a culture that does not respect artists, that maybe respects more the sciences, and you can get just as much out of art as you can science.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I think you made this point too, is like there's this interesting dynamic with like music and visual arts and writing, when like all of these things have to feed on each other to exist, when like writing is often so devalued, and like even poetry versus fiction, it's like some of these things are like paid by the word, and you're like, well, poetry it's not about the length of it, it's about like what it's saying, it's about the intention behind each word. So it creates this unnecessary like power dynamic almost between them. And I think like that, there's such a devaluing of art generally, and then all the subdivisions, like we're fighting against the same very small pot of money. Which, speaking of that pot of money, would love to hear more, like walk us through a little more of the actual like publishing process. Lauren, we'll come back to you.
Yeah.
Of like publishing process, like how much money are you actually, like if you publish a book, how much money do you actually make off of it? Like, is it livable? How do you, free looks ready, but also like you can self-publish, like what is that process? You're also like, if you're self-publishing, you're also facing a little bit of like societal pushback of being like, well, why are you self-published? Like, why couldn't you get published by one of these big places? And so like there is that dynamic as well, but I think Daniel, you made this point, is if you self-publish, you make more money. Or like you can make more money off your book. So there is this like kind of a lot of balance between self-publishing and publishing within the industry. So we'd love to kind of talk a little bit more about that and everyone's individual experiences.
I'll talk less about publishing because I think you all can do that, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about the booking ends of it. But I will say that self-publishing, you get to keep all the money, right? Like however much you put into making it, you know from the beginning how much you're going to get back to it.
Yeah.
I can print on demand, like you're very much in control of the process. I found traditional publishing to be a nightmare. I also love externally imposed deadlines, but I don't love externally imposed restrictions. And so there was like my book was the most expensive book that my publisher has ever published because there's images in it. And at first they were like, oh, if you want images, we have to put a cutout in the center because that's what publishing industry standard is, because what they care about is cost. And I was like, no, I care about the story being told in this way. And so there were different fights that I had to have with my publisher that I was not having with myself because I was clear about what that story was. But when it comes to bookings now, because that is where I make my money, right? It's not actually from the books. The books do sell. I used to sell like 1,000 copies a year of the self-published book I had. But because I had no understanding of what the publishing field was, I thought that was bad.
No, that's very good.
I didn't realize that that's better than most traditionally published writers do in terms of selling their books.
Yeah, you're doing great.
So that's why I went to a traditional publisher for this one, because I was like, I want to be on the same level. Meanwhile, I already surpassed some of these levels. I just didn't have industry knowledge, right? But I will say that this book came out in November, and by January, they already had to print a second print run, which means 1,000 or so in 2 months. So it's like there's a trade-off that, depending on what you want to do with the work, I think you might choose different paths and routes. And the last thing I'll say is that with my booking agency, they set a very strict and severe price for frequency to show up. But that makes it so that when I'm out there, I can go do everything else for free. So if you see me on my Instagram, you're like, damn, Free is booked and busy, he must be rich. I probably get paid for 1 out of every dozen shows at my actual fee. But because that fee is met, I'm able to then go to these open mics, these other places, because there's a realistic disenfranchisement of these spaces that I can't be like, if you can't meet my fee, I won't show up, because then I'm not actually being in community and reaching the people that I'm trying to reach. But that other structure is what allows me to do that, because otherwise I would be working, trying to make money in order to be able to go. So it gives me that flexibility. Donnie Rose, who's a poet who's doing a workshop later on this year, when I was in my later 20s and was starting to like have my profile grow and do all of these things, I was still not clear about the business back end of this. Not clear about where I was in terms of like the caliber of poets and whatever. I thought everybody would eventually be a professional artist. I realized how few of us actually make it to be full-time artists. And when Donnie Rose, he pulled me to the side one day and said, Frequency, you better stop taking those little $500 shows. Mind you, my rent at this time is like $600. So like, it's no little, like 500 is not a little thing, but he was like, at the caliber, the trajectory that you are at, if you continue to take these prices, you are lessening the playing field for everybody else. Because nobody else who's under you and whatever that means can ask for more money than you would be willing to. They'd be like, I get Frequency for $500. Why would I pay you $1,000? So, yeah.
Can you repeat the first part of the question?
Yeah. Oh, you're okay. I think I'll expand the question a little bit more because Frequency touched on the other really important point, which is like, what's the role of, as an artist, we have self-publishing as an option. We have the traditional publishing industry, and you know what? We have magazines and like quarterly publications as well as like this opportunity for bookings. Like how are you navigating these things? How are you making choices between which thing? Like, do you just try to publish in like magazines or like quarterly things? Are you trying to self-publish? Why go the traditional publishing route? Like there's a big difference in like balance between like what do you have, like the restrictions you're having in traditional publishing, the fights you have to have literally with your publisher to get them to see the vision of what you're trying to create, versus like self-publishing, which like has its own set of things where you're still making the money, and similar like with publications and magazines and journals, whichever subdivision you want to go on that. Like those have their own set of restrictions and are often limited in how they can pay and compensate people. And you have bookings where you're also negotiating and you're fighting. All of these things are swirling around, and like how do you make decisions on which things to do given kind of all of the balance between all of these different pieces?
As someone who's been traditionally published, a reason why I don't self-publish it, again with my chronic illness, like you have to do a lot of things like the marketing, all that, but I can't do that.
Yeah.
It comforts me a little bit that there is a team on the publisher side that will do that for me, because I just can't. Being chronically ill and having a full-time job, I just can't. For me, this book was published in 2023 by an independent press called Saravan Books. They're based in Louisville, Kentucky. I was really happy with the job that they did. I feel like they did an excellent job publishing my book. It's a small press with about 6, at the time it was like 6 people. I think they've expanded a bit, but 6 women and non-binary people. So they only publish 10 to 12 books a year. So I think one of the reasons why because I was sending my book out to open book contests, open reading periods where a press would be like, from this month to this month, we're accepting manuscripts. And also poets, we don't have agents. So it's just like, anybody can like send something in. So I did that. First book contest, because unfortunately, a lot of poets, when they get their first book published, you have to allow them like have won a contest, and you know there can only be one winner per contest.
Yeah.
So for me, I feel like even though I went a traditional route, I feel like I was privileged to have a non-traditional version of a traditional route. So I had made back when Twitter was Twitter. I made a tweet, and I was like, oh, got my another round of like rejections. You know, I get these very nice personal rejections, like although we didn't pick you, the judges really liked it. You were a finalist, even though you weren't the winner.
We liked you, but no thank you.
Yeah. which is, no fault. The only one person can win, I guess, if it's a contest. But
Yeah.
I made a tweet and I was like, got my this round of rejections, gonna revise the manuscript. And the woman who is now the editor of Sarah Band Books, Kristen Renee Miller, DM'd me on Twitter. And she was like, hi, we saw that tweet. I had a poem that was I try to, if I'm working on a manuscript, I try to publish poems in individual journals before,
Yeah.
like trying to publish the whole thing so you can get like an audience and just have your work around. That's kind of like the bat symbol of like, oh, this person might be dropping a book. They have all these poems coming out. So I had a poem published and she was like, hey, I just read your poem and I went to your website. Artists make a website, even if it's just a portfolio.
Yes.
Because she said, I read that poem, then I went to your website and read the other poems, and we're really interested in your work. Would you we see that you keep getting rejected, would you be willing to let us read the manuscript? So I had no idea who they were. I'd never heard of them before, but she was like, here's the website link to learn more about us. They had a little 6-minute mini documentary about the press. And I don't know, I just felt very safe in their hands because they had this little documentary explaining all their processes, and I had a whole bunch of questions, and she's like sat and answered every one of them.
Amazing.
And one of the things I really liked is that they only publish 10 to 12 books a year, as opposed to, let's say, like bigger presses that might publish 40 or 40 more a year. They said that we publish 10 to 12 books a year so that each person can have focus on their book when it's time for their production.
Yeah.
So I felt like as a debut author, that was a really good, just a really good place for me. I got the cover I wanted. I was a big fan of Delita Martin, who made the cover. I got the cover that I wanted. And while you cannot live off of like the book sales, traditionally published books you get in advance, and if you outsell that advance, that's when you get a royalty. But also, I kind of knew that I wasn't gonna like be able to live off the book. But I was also, I just started, I was a visiting professor at the time. So again, full-time job, I was worried about the health insurance, and had a full-time job. And I guess I just wanted my book to be a conversation with people. Not that I knew that it wasn't gonna like make enough money for me to live off of, but I wanted to see, whether it's traditionally published or not traditionally published, it's always a joy to have someone say, hey, I read your book. Or they might tag you in a post and be like, oh, I picked this up. And I think for me, that was the joy of it. Also, not having to do all the social media marketing myself. And, I don't know if this is an elitist thing to say, but I wanted to like have my book be submitted to awards and different things for fellowships. And I know sometimes
That's an okay
I
one
went
to
traditional
want.
because I wanted it in bookstores.
Yeah.
yeah, I was a child that loved to read, and my parents told me I read really early, and it's just, I had a joy of my parents bringing me to the bookstore, and I always wanted to see my book on the shelf, and sometimes self-published books don't qualify for certain awards, and I just wanted to have it be able, even if it was rejected, it has been, shout out to the Wine
Come
Foundation.
on.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but I still see an award on there, so.
It won that. My press sent it to many places. Yeah, but shout out to the Whiting. We love you. So yeah, I just wanted it to be able to be in bookstores, up for competitions and awards, and I just felt like a part of that because I don't fully understand all the business stuff. I wanted to give it to a team that I trusted. I trust Sarah Band, and make them do all the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having a full team behind you to push out your book makes a big difference than if you're the one making every single choice and decision and all about yourself. You touched on a couple of things I wanna expand on, and one thing is just like when you're going through traditional publishing with a book of poetry, like what's a reasonable advance? Like how much should you expect?
Oh, look at me, I didn't get that.
I don't think advances
But I
in
think,
poetry are
like-
that typical though.
That's
That's kind of the question that.
Because the idea of an advance is like they know that it's gonna make a certain amount of money.
Yeah.
And poets we're just not that popular enough to be, you know what I mean? Like people don't bet on poetry, kind of like you're saying, it's underinvested in art field.
We don't usually have agents either because agents can't really make money off poets.
Mhm.
So wild. Yeah.
I mean, adding to kind of the considerations maybe as a poet that hasn't been published one way or the other. So before I became a published author, I worked at Out Magazine, and I know the magazine would not review your book, wouldn't even look at your book, would basically give it away if it was self-published. You couldn't get media to look at it, so there wasn't going to be a review of that book, which kind of signaled to me like, oh, I'm not going to go that route. And to be fair, there is a lot of self-publishing that isn't good publishing. It's often what do they call it? There's vanity publishing, where it's like you didn't bother getting a editor, to help you with your work, to like get it up to, I don't know. I mean, it does ultimately come to the question of like, what do you want out of it?
Mm-hmm.
What do you want out of the work, right? And I think if you want to reach audiences, that's great, and like whatever the benefits of going through a traditional publisher are, like maybe you can eschew them, and like it doesn't matter. Like the publisher of my first book, one person show. There was no team behind it. I had to do my own marketing, I had to do my own PR and everything like that, and I don't have the connections to like those PR connections, so I had to do all that stuff anyways. I mean, Saraband's great, and I think also a little more on the not on the orthodox side, but like on the rare side, where there are more than, in terms of independent publishers, more than like 3 people to kind of do some of that work. But yeah, I mean, like I feel that if fundamentally you were just trying to reach audiences, like that helps you guide, the kind of calculations you need to make, knowing full well, a standard royalty is usually like 10%. That's if you sell it per book you sell at retail, which is different from like other forms of if you're ebook or ebook, you get a different royalty. If you get an advance, you don't get royalties until after your advance is kind of basically paid for. Those kinds of considerations. I mean, I lean towards just trying to reach a wide audience, and while I could do self-publishing, because of like the trade-off of not getting press, and it's already tough to get press even if you go the traditional route, and that means that I don't reach a bigger audience.
Yeah.
And so to me, like doing the work of like sending poems to different journals and everything to kind of prove that you have an audience is a worthwhile kind of step to a more traditional route, so that you can continue reaching new audiences.
Let me say that I didn't know that, right? Because I don't get published. I submit to literary places, poetry places, and I have like a 99% rejection rate. At the same time, my books sell really, really well. And so for me, the way I was able to get into it was like through magazines like TBD. Like those are the only places that were willing to publish my work, because it didn't fit it. Like I don't have an MFA, I didn't have those entryways in. My book is traditionally published, but it's published by Button Poetry, which is a video platform that recorded all my poems and helped build mine. And that's how I got a traditionally published book. Otherwise, I don't think I would have been able to get a book contract. So it's so interesting to hear from you all, because you have all this insider knowledge that I just quite frankly don't have. And it's also making me reflect on like, I put a lot of fucking work into this shit. Like hell yeah, like I was doing all the promo on the public, I designed this and this, and it's just yeah, I feel like I'm seeing the industry in a different way right now than I have. And I also, again, really want to thank these community magazines because people like me are not getting published, but people are looking for our work.
Exactly.
Yes,
That's
I was-
boring.
I was just thinking like maybe I am the publisher, so
Yeah.
I am
You
self-publishing.
are.
Yes. So yeah, I think for me as being the publisher, it is so that people can publish what they need to say without me having to like be like, no, you can't say this. Like we don't like we're not interested, you know, who knows, but like when you talk about distribution and oh maybe if you change this then the magazine could do this, it's like but maybe I don't want it to do that, like maybe I just want it to be a platform for people to be able to like get their shit out, you know what I'm saying? So can I curse?
Those two have already cursed.
We actually also don't censor here.
So yeah, it is super interesting. I think for me, I value people not having to change their stuff and it coming out as honestly as possible. And then, like, yeah, we are super organic in the way that we advertise everything. Like, I design everything. Like, it's super organic. We don't even like boost them on Instagram. Like, it's just like the community, you know what I'm saying? And so I think that's what makes it so beautiful is because we build our support through just like talking to people, meeting with people, having them publish in the magazine if they're interested, and they meet other people and they get opportunities through that. Even if I can't like financially support them, they like, I see them doing a gig with somebody that I'm like, okay, yes, okay, it's working. So yeah, I think that it's just interesting to hear you guys talking. I'm like, okay, I am a publisher. So yeah,
You have more power than you realize.
yeah,
And the good power.
yeah, it's just the trade of like the money making. We have to all eat. We have to all do the thing. And like you said, like poetry is very powerful. And what is that tool for? And for me as a publisher, I'm not trying to dilute anyone's tool because I'm trying to get to wherever we're trying to go. So yeah, but that's our magazine is unique in that way, I would say.
And I would say stay away from any publisher or journal that makes you change it. Thankfully, like usually when I submit to journals, I think there's only been one time someone suggested I change something, but I don't want you to think that submitting to a journal they're gonna be like you have to change this and this and that. In my experience, I really haven't had that, but there was one time that I did, and I told them no, I'm not changing it, and that can go either two ways. Either they don't want to publish it or they do. Thankfully, the person was like, okay. Yeah, I don't think it's, and maybe this is my personal opinion, and maybe Daniel might have something to say. I don't think it's common to like have a poem accepted in a journal and then making you change it.
I think what I was speaking to is like changing your practice, like changing how you write, how you to try to fit into things. Some people are like
your own voice, your own personal voice.
Yeah.
I feel like there are ways I could get published traditionally, but it would be changing my fundamental voice and orientation as a poet because there are certain ways, like I see that there are things that get published and they tend to fit into a thing. And I recognize that I'm not quite in that thing and I can make some moves to get in there, but I don't want to. And so that's what I'm saying. For me, discovering that there were other places outside of the more traditional places, which I constantly got rejected from, that were willing to do that, opened up just a new understanding for me that like you can be a published writer without necessarily having to go in the places that you were taught is the only.
You don't have to do that.
Yeah.
There are just certain journals I do it because certain things, but like I'm thinking about like Hanif Abdurraqi. He doesn't have an MFA. And just like all the wonderful, and he started out as a music critic, and because his
He
music
started out as a spoken word artist.
No, he started out as a music critic, and because a lot of the things that he tried to publish music reviews, they said it was too poetic. So that's when he started writing poetry and spoken word. So, I'm thinking about a lot, like I'm thinking about Danae Smith, like all these spoken word artists who also do write page poetry, but I don't think you have to change your voice to, I feel like there is someone that is going to, I feel like this is like a soul bathing. I feel like there is someone coming along who's gonna be like, y'all are just gonna like see each other, and that's gonna be person. Like it's hard finding like a journal, because there are a lot of journals that I don't submit to because I feel like it may cater more towards highbrow or like whiteness.
You know, it's not.
And that's something where it's just I already know, so I'm not going to submit to it. But I do think that you don't have to change your voice for that. And I do think there are a lot of experimental journals and things like that that, I mean, honestly, they would be much better.
No, and I think that's what I'm speaking to, right? Is writing was taught to me, and not even just writing, publishing was taught to me in such a narrow lens, right? You know, if you now have those big 5 publishers, like even you are non-traditional in the way that I was taught to think about publishing because you went to a small press. So it's like, yeah, I think I'm grateful to you because I'm telling you, I'm learning so much from hearing about this because I'm realizing there's so many assumptions also that I made about publishing and different things that people went in a more traditional way. But I'm like, that's just not true. We all are here having very similar struggles that are in conversation with each other.
Can I say one last thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, like, if you're a designer, you should just make the magazine. Because I think whenever I was in school, like, my professor, I was a good designer, but like, it was like, you shouldn't do it like that, you should do it like this. And I was like, why would I do that? You know what I'm saying? The things that I love about my visual language are things that maybe weren't working in those spaces. And I don't know, I would say maybe I have like not the fullest picture of the world and the business of it all. So it's like, hey, I'm gonna do my own thing, you know what I'm saying? And I'll be able to like express my visuals in the way that I want to. So I just want to encourage anybody, if they're not a poet or writer, but they are visual creators, to create their own things, because who cares? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Or like, it's important. Not who cares, it's important.
Yeah. Also, I think we're getting back into the era of zines, which I'm
Oh, I
really
love a
glad.
good zine.
So
I have
excited about.
I have a class dedicated to where we're going to the end of the poetry unit before we get to the short story and flash fiction. I make them make a zine of a poem they've written so that they can have collage, you know,
Do you
to
want to
visual.
teach a workshop next year at the People's Storytelling Festival of that?
I don't know
Not
if I
quite on the
teach
spot.
zines very well, but I'm sure.
Great. See us. Stay tuned.
Yeah, because Sarah Van has a zine workshop. My press has a.
Yeah.
I have hosted a zine, a virtual zine workshop.
I was mostly joking. If you'd like to, I'd love to have you, but I don't want to actually do that.
You put me on the spot on
I will
camera.
put you
like,
on the spot.
But Sarah Van has a zine machine where it's like they hire. It's like a gumball.
Oh.
Like they publish the zines and it's like a cute thing. Like you can buy it online, but if like you're at an event, they have like it looks like those things where you get the temporary tattoos.
Yes. Nice.
They put the zines in there.
Did they trademark that? Can they do it?
We have 1 year until next year's festival.
Yes. Yeah. We got
Yeah,
lots to do.
my press. I knew about zines, but when my press came to me and asked if I wanted to teach a virtual zine thing, like they teach one every month. I'm one of them.
Yeah.
If you go on their website or on their Vimeo, they have recordings of it. So I love a good zine, is all I'm saying. I love zines.
That's amazing. Before we wrap, I want to see if the audience has any questions. Does the audience have any questions?
I have a question that's not exactly tied to the monetization of it, but maybe you guys, more people can, like, speak to that. This is specifically about the reworking of the thesis into like the collection that you were then trying to publish. I'm curious what that process was like for you from a craft standpoint, but also like, what were you taking into consideration as you were doing that to make it into a collection that you were like wanting to publish?
It's kind of like, how do you sequence the poems in your manuscript or something? Honestly, for me, I was just thinking about what was the emotional journey I was putting somebody through to read the book. And then I just didn't have any apologies about it. Like I said, it took me a long time to get the thing published. And in a way, you need that self-belief. Even if you don't like extend it beyond the publication of it, because I know writers, not even just poets, who don't love reading, publicly,
Oh,
which
I
is,
was like,
you know,
It's
like,
it's
like
just, they don't
being
read.
a reading,
They don't have any
you know,
books.
like doing
Reading out
readings,
loud, yeah.
which is unfortunate because that's really, as poets, the only way you can sell your book. You have to engage an audience with your work for them to want to buy it. That's why booking is so important for you to have in this capitalist system, like value to a degree to your publisher. Because if you're not going out there and like trying to sell your book, then the publisher, even the small publisher, is going to be like, well, you don't try to move units of your own book. Do you not even believe in your own work, right? Yeah, I just think that like you kind of have to do both. You have to remember like you being your own marketing machine. It means you go out there and make an audience for your work, and you should want to do that. You should fake it till you make it. Then like just have that kind of stuff. I don't have imposter syndrome, so it's very easy to do it. I just go and do it because I'm just like, well, you're just not my audience. Like I go to like, well, you're just not my audience. Just gotta keep on. You just gotta keep on doing it. And I'm gonna shut up after this, and I wanted to bring it up, but I think this kind of is a nice, interesting bow to it, or maybe it actually is a Pandora's box. So,
we're right.
Percival Everett,
Yeah.
right, who wrote James and other books. He was on a fantastic, I think it was
CBS Morning News or something, they interviewed him in his house.
was it CBS? It was Dua Lipa. Dua Lipa.
oh,
interviewed
yeah,
him.
yeah.
Dua Lipa, I love that.
Dua Lipa has a really great podcast. She's a really interesting person. He said to her, he said to her, the revolutionary thing isn't the writing part of it, it's the reading. It's the readers who bring meaning to your work.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
to me, when you kind of think about it in terms of other media, it's like how are you engaging an audience? How are you transmitting to an audience, right? And that's the revolutionary, that's the changing bit. Like when you take your work and like how do you usher or shape the reading experience for your audience to kind of get what you're saying, right? And like I think if you were kind of focused on that, I think your North Star is clear, right? You're not kind of clouded by that, and let that like be like charge your belief, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Krishna, do you want to add anything?
Sure. When ordering feels like its own type of mess of it, because like you have all these poems. I remember like in high school, like in English class, my teachers were like, oh, you don't work well with like transitions from paragraph to paragraph. Like I have the stuff you need. I don't know. So ordering is a lot, but also similar to what Daniel said, like what story do you want to tell? And I was writing all these poems about New Orleans, even though I was in New York, and some poets like try to reinvent themselves. Like I 10 toes down, I love where I'm from, love New Orleans. So a lot of the poems were about New Orleans, some New York poems, but I was like, okay, let's tell a story about, I write a lot about like pre and post Katrina New Orleans and how gentrification has like decreased the Black population and just, kinship, whether it's personal or just historical things like that. So I wanted that to shine through with New Orleans being its own character, its own living, breathing thing. Also, community is really important. I remember my thesis advisor was like, okay, we have this, but you have to do things. You have to do this thing. You have to tell me like who you're in conversation with. Like a poet who has a debut novel, a poet over 50, and a poet who's dead. Who are your literary kins? So I had to think about that. Like I chose Gwendolyn Brooks, Tiana Clark, and Robin Cost Lewis because it's just like it's never just about you. There is not one just I. There's a we to like the witnessing or whatever you're writing about. So ordering was a big important part of like I would say thematically. I went thematically what I really wanted to say and having New Orleans as a focal point. Getting the book title changed when I got to the publisher too, because I had a book title that I liked, but it didn't really encompass all the themes. So me and the press talked about that, and the book became the title. I'm Always So Serious had 5 poems with that title. You don't have to read them back to back. They just all have the same title. It's like, what can I produce with the same title, but just the body of the poem's different. So thinking about that, and like Daniel said, an audience. For me, sometimes publishing in journals is reaching a wide audience because like no one really has a lot of money to travel. So like if you are publishing in like magazines where they have an international, like someone like Instagrammed me from Chile and said they read my book. So it's just like there are people everywhere around the world that read journals. So I tend to do that, but also readings in New Orleans because the book is a love letter to New Orleans. So I always want to read here. When the book first came out, it was during Mardi Gras, so everybody was like drunk in the parade, you know. So my first reading was at my MFA, my alma mater. We had an alumni reading, and then once Mardi Gras was over, most of my readings were here in New Orleans.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I would say I don't have a thesis, not done the MFA thing.
You don't have to.
No, I'm not done yet. But I have had a thesis written about my work.
Oh,
Wow, which I think is so interesting.
Have you read it?
Yeah, it's by someone in Spain. They did this whole thesis on my, and I was like, oh, because at that time I was going through the rejection from journals, and I had to come to this realization that I was like, something about how you are intersecting with this work. People will study your work in those spaces, but you may not ever actually be able to get into those spaces, and that is interesting in and of itself. And so to this day, like I've applied to grad schools and stuff, I always get rejected, but I've also taught at grad schools, which I think is just such a mindfuck. But it again brings me back to why community-based publications are so important. And I think I'm curious for you, based on this question, like how do you figure out how to put a magazine together each time? Like,
Like pitches, like how does that play?
Yeah, I would say like we used to be a 2-person team, now we're 6. So that is yeah, we're growing. So it is evolving, but it essentially is like us talking about things that we want to talk about, literally as we figure all this societal stuff out, and then we ask people to respond to those things and how they're coming, and like I'm ferociously on Instagram, stalking everyone, seeing what they're doing. And so we're like, yeah, just trying to find people who are already doing work like that we can like visually see, pull them into it. And yeah, we have like a few key things that we have in the magazine, like playlists, all these different things.
Yeah.
And then yeah, so it kind of comes together like that. I would say the people push the themes to wherever they want to take them, and I let them, because yeah, this is ours. So yeah, that's the process. I would say we do a few shoots here and there too, which is always fun for me. But yeah, that's it. I order it to my heart's desire when I think people would think is good for the layout. And then she's published.
There she is in the world.
Yes.
I'm also curious too, why a magazine?
I've
Why not
always,
an anthology? Why not a, like?
I've just always been interested in magazines. I think because magazines are so visual, it really plays well for me. Like I did not come into this thinking about writing like at all. So that was something that Soul brought into it. And yeah, so that's just not my cup of tea, unfortunately.
We all have roles to play.
Yes, exactly. I knew that was not my role to play. So yeah, but I think the magazine helps it come together visually for me. You know, that slick paper, you know, that.
So shiny.
Yes, so shiny and fun. I think magazines can be fun, like, you know, like the little activities inside, and like, I don't know, I think you can like bring different levels to the publication because it's like this culture artifact, basically.
Oh, yeah.
Were you looking for a specific insight about constructing your manuscript?
No, I'm just curious. I don't know. I got my MFA and I'm not a fiction writer, but I just love the craft and process part. So I'm just curious about like how that worked for you in terms of like how you approached that process, because they seem like 2 very different things to me. Like reworking a thesis into a collection of poetry seems like a very different artistic endeavor, I guess, is really what I'm asking.
Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say real quickly. To me, I knew that I wanted to write a book.
Yeah.
Like my MFA I was like, oh, this is gonna give me time to write,
Write the book.
and I want to write a book.
Mhm.
And I chose, you know, an MFA because your thesis isn't a long essay. It is the creative work.
Yeah.
So I told my thesis advisor I wanted to write a book. He was like, all right, cool, and he just went with it. So I just knew that's what I wanted to
Yeah.
do. And while I was always good in English, I didn't want to analyze. I wanted to create.
Yeah.
So that's why I chose an MFA. I wanted time to write the book.
Yeah.
And I feel like having New Orleans at the center and just a thesis, because I had to turn in to graduate, but that was always gonna be the book. You know, once I graduated, I cut the book about 20 pages down, the title changed,
Yeah.
and I ordered it thematically how I wanted it, but it also was helpful that my thesis advisor was Black, so I was just a Black Southerner at that.
Mhm.
So I was just doing what I wanted to do and not by anyone's
It all
standards.
fits together.
Yeah, we were just like, oh, what do you want to do? Okay, let's help you achieve your thing. So that's what I always did going into it. And with Saraband, I trusted Saraband because they didn't really want to change anything. They gave me suggestions and notes, you know, when you have like an editing thing, but they were like, these are suggestions, nothing is forced upon you. So I just wanted to write a really Black book about a Black city that I am from, and I did it because I wanted to.
I did
Oh, yeah,
it.
yeah.
Wait, what was the name of your original book? If you're able to share. Never mind. I'm always so serious.
I just wanted to add though about editing. We were talking about MFA and everything. Be really open to it because don't let your ego be the enemy of your work. And by that I mean remember your audience. Like when you allow an editor or even just your friends who read your pieces give you like constructive, even if it's not constructive feedback, what they're telling you though is that I don't understand this part. And if you help clarify it, and maybe it's very clear to you, and certainly it's your prerogative to not change anything, but it's signaling to you like, oh, this area is not transmitting.
Mhm.
And what I mentioning, you know, like thinking what I said before, that the revolutionary part of reading, if you're not helping your audience read you, then you're kind of like taking out that person from like that revolutionary process or engaging with your work. And I think that like, again, you don't have to listen to, you know, people's, you know, comments or their feedback and everything, but there's such a value there to have like readers and to give that feedback, and like I just don't think we should be so overly precious about the work to think like it's always gonna be like perfect out of our own hands and out of our own mouths. Really, that's where the idea of craft comes in,
Yeah.
right? Like what we're doing is trying to shape the language, if it's language or syntax. You're trying to shape it in a way to kind of communicate. And if you fail to communicate, then you're failing your audience, and then the revolutionary possibilities of that are eclipsed to me. So, yeah.
Thank you so much.
I want to give everyone a chance to, if there's anything else anyone would like to say before we wrap up, give anyone, the floor is yours, if there's anything else. If there's not,
Oh, also one thing,
Yes.
I will, God, I would like
Got a lot
to,
to say, come on.
I know, it's so funny. About publishing to other journals and stuff like that, you know, like, just keep at it. Just like that self-delusion, and also you can be strategic. A lot of the things I get published in, it's because of like, oh, they've got a theme on protest or whatever, and I'm like, oh, I have a poem on protest, and I'll send that, and that's kind of how I get published, really, because for the most part, I get a lot more rejections than I get acceptances. But I'm kind of always just looking for the theme journal or issue that might align with, you know, what I've been writing, and kind of pair those up. Because the truth of the matter, when a journal is like, read you know, read some of our old issues or whatever to get a feel of what, or, you know, whatever. I'm like, oh, I don't have $30 to spend on like 2 copies of your journal.
Yeah.
Like, what are making this point of entry so difficult and everything? So I think you can be strategic and, you know, whatever. And sometimes if you, depending on which, if it's a paying market, you can at least, especially for fiction, you can get a couple $100s. I mean, 300, I think. I think poetry said gives you
Sorry,
300.
who gives you
I
300?
think
Poetry gives
poetry.
you $30.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what do you do for 300?
Poetry Foundation, I think they give $300.
Oh, well,
They
now
do
we know.
actually, I did see their
Yeah,
poll,
and
they just put one out.
Foglifter, when they paid me $50 for my poem, I thought I was gonna like fall off my chair. I was like, $50 for a
Oh,
poem?
rich, right?
What? Yeah. Anyways,
Thank y'all so much.
I actually want to say that TBD has submissions open
What?
as of now for our next issue. So
Do you have a theme?
yes, we're talking about freedom, strategy, solidarity, breakthrough, continuity.
Amazing.
So, yes.
It's almost like what has inspired this entire festival.
That's what I'm saying.
That's like
The
the
people
influence.
are
The people are here.
figuring it out, stirring the pot.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that's
Well,
what it is.
thank you all so much for sharing. Or do you want to see? Is there anything else anyone wants to say before I?
Buy our work.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Buy our work.
Buy our work here or go on. There you go.
Buy our work.
Also, the thing that I feel like I'll contribute is like the delusion of it all. Like, you really have to believe that your work has worth and a place in this world, and
Yeah.
sometimes just like put your fucking head down and do it. Yep.
This has been so inspiring, y'all. I've been like, oh, now I know how to fix this piece now.
Right, yeah.
But thank you so much for all your time and for sharing. Like, I know Free and I have talked about the publishing experience before. It hasn't always been not super rosy all the time. And so like it's not always an easy thing to talk about, and like money is also still taboo for some reason. Even though, you know, anyways. But thank you all so much for sharing everything, and excited to see more work from everybody. So thank you so much.